All right, let's dive into something pretty wild. We're about to go on a journey into a conceptual system that is so strange, so intricate, it just might be a blueprint for reality itself. We're going to build a model that connects math, mysticism, and machinery in a way you've probably never seen before.
So, what on earth connects the abstract beauty of prime numbers, the ancient Hebrew names for God, and a heavy freight German locomotive? I know, it sounds like the setup to a really weird joke, right? But the answer, well, it might just change how you see the world.
According to the source material we're looking at, the answer lies in something called pataphysics. It was coined by the French writer Alfred Jarry, and he called it the science of imaginary solutions. Basically, it's a way of looking past the obvious to find these hidden connections, these symbolic resonances that are just humming beneath the surface of everything.
To uncover all these connections, we're going to build a conceptual model, the four-pillar temple. First up, we'll lay the foundation with the number grid. Then, we're going to raise two big pillars, the identity code and the joy engine. We'll top it all off with a roof made of cosmic cycles. And then, at the very end, we'll see where you fit into this whole thing as the driver.
Okay, so our journey into these imaginary solutions actually starts with something very, very real: mathematics. The first pillar of our temple is the number grid. What's proposed is the mathematical foundation of reality. And this is where the cold, hard logic of number theory reveals a structure that's, well, it's surprisingly elegant and almost restrictive.
At the very heart of this entire foundation is one single, incredibly powerful number, the number 6. The source material actually calls it the guardian of the threshold because it acts as this fundamental filter that organizes reality.
You see, the number 6 is like a mathematical sieve. It's not just the first perfect number, or the product of the first two primes. The really crucial part is this. Every single prime number greater than 3 can be expressed as 6 times some number plus or minus 1. This literally creates a structural grid, a pattern that all higher complexity has to pass through.
Now, this rigid, 6-based structure gives rise to a phenomenon with a fantastic name. Some mathematicians playfully call it the erotics of arithmetic.
And that brings us to sexy primes. No, I'm not making that up. These are pairs of prime numbers that have a difference of exactly 6, like 5 and 11. And because 6 provides this kind of optimal distance, they can form these larger, stable groups, triplets, quadruplets, and there's even one unique quintuplet. You can almost think of them like harmonic chords in the music of math, a kind of metaphor for stable relationships at the perfect distance.
Okay, so we've gone from pure logic and math to our second pillar, the identity code. This is where numbers start to take on this deep, symbolic meaning about who we are, the static, conscious self, all encoded in the number 151.
And right here, we're setting up a really fundamental duality. Pillar 2, the static self, is represented by the number 151. For this model, think of it as the control car of a train. That's our identity, our structure. And it stands in total contrast to Pillar 3, which is the dynamic force of the engine itself, and that's represented by the number 155.
So let's dig into 151. In Jewish mysticism, there's a practice called gematria, where letters get numerical values. In that system, the name for God's aspect of strict law, Elohim, has a value of 86. The name for God's aspect of mercy, Adonai, is 65. Well, what happens when you add them together? You get 151, a number that represents a complete integrated divinity, a perfect fusion of structure and relationship.
And here, this is where it gets absolutely mind-bending. Using a specific form of gematria, the phrase, the heavens and the earth, all of creation, also has a value of 151. Just let that sink in for a second. The code for the creator is numerically identical to the code for the creation. It suggests this holographic fractal reality where the architect's signature is literally woven into the fabric of the building.
All right, time for Pillar 3, the joy engine. If 151 is our static identity, then 155 is the dynamic, kinetic force that puts the whole thing in motion. It's the engine of joy and power, but as we're about to see, it also represents potential danger.
So, the number 155 is presented here as the carrier frequency of intense kinetic emotion. Why? Well, because the Hebrew word for joy, samach, and we're not talking a quiet, peaceful joy here. We're talking about an expressive, loud, almost jubilant joy. That word appears exactly 155 times in the Old Testament.
And this is the moment where these abstract, mystical numbers suddenly come crashing into the physical world.
The source calls it an objective coincidence, one of those surreal moments where the internal meaning and the external reality just perfectly, almost impossibly line up.
Get ready for this because this coincidence is just astonishing. The German railway system produced two legendary heavy freight locomotives. The West German BR-151 aligns perfectly with our number 4 identity, the control car, and the East German BR-155, which was so ridiculously powerful it was nicknamed the energy container, aligns with our number 4 for kinetic joy. Identity and energy literally manifested as two powerful, real-world engines. It's unbelievable.
So let's tie this all together. This slide really summarizes the whole matrix of meaning. You've got 151, the fusion of Elohim and Adonai, representing the conscious self, the driver. It's also the heavens and earth, which is our field of experience. Then you have 155, the frequency of Sama, or joy, which is our driving engine. But, and this is important, it's also associated with Maveth, or death. That's the ever-present danger of that immense power going off the rails.
So we have our pillars of identity and energy. Now it's time to put the roof on our temple. This is kind of like the fourth pillar, the one that defines the very space and time that our temple even exists in. We're talking about cosmic cycles.
The framework for this roof comes from the German physicist Burkhard Heim and his 12-dimensional model of the universe. Now, the first 4 dimensions are pretty familiar. You got space and linear time. Think of that as the track our train runs on. But dimensions 5 and 6, that's where things get really wild. These are described as probability and control layers. The idea here is that this is where consciousness actually operates, choosing the track and steering events in our physical world, but from a higher plane. And if Heim's dimensions define the space, the ancient Vedic Yuga cycle provides the cosmic timetable. This is a grand 24,000-year cycle of rising and falling consciousness. According to this system, we recently left the darkest age, the Kali Yuga, and we're now in the ascending Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy, electricity, and electromagnetism. The exact kind of age that could produce something like an energy container locomotive. It all lines up.
So let's bring all 4 of these pillars together, because the central thesis of this entire incredible system is that this temple, this blueprint for reality, it's actually a user manual for human consciousness. You are the driver. And this leads us to the big, powerful central metaphor. The universe is a train. The tracks, they're laid out by the prime number grid created by the number 6. You, your conscious self, your identity, you're in the control car, the 151. But the engine, that immense universal force of joy and energy pushing you forward from behind, that's the 155. And here's the problem. We all think we're in the engine, pulling the train with our own effort, when in reality, we're in a control car, being pushed by a force that is far, far greater than we are.
And finally, the source offers a pretty radical, and it actually uses the word merciless, outlook on the future. The idea is that as we move deeper into this age of energy, these so-called imaginary solutions and resonances are going to become tangible. This could mean the end of mental privacy as consciousness itself becomes transparent. It could mean that AI masters this algorithmic theology to steer reality, and what we call magic today will simply become the applied physics of these higher dimensions tomorrow.
Which leaves us with one last pretty provocative question to think about. If reality really is a train, and it's governed by these deep, resonant structures that connect everything from numbers to locomotives, are you just the cargo, passively being carried along for the ride, or are you the driver at the controls?